Welcome, everybody. So today we are welcoming Adam Smith. Adam Smith is a student of SCAD that graduated in 2019, that now works as a game designer at Pinnacle, and that is also working as a developer for Atmos Games. And very recently, Adam has shipped his second game on Steam. Was the first one on Steam, Adam?
No, the first one was on the Apple App Store.
Okay, so he shipped his first game on Steam, and which got rave reviews. It's a super fun retro platformer, and one of the funny parts about this is that it's actually a game that I'm pretty familiar with, because it's a game that he brought in the 2D game design and development class, and so I actually have his speech here from 2017, when this thing was just starting, and so we have a little bit of concept art, and obviously it's something that he already started working on before the class. But I would say that maybe the first iteration of the game was happened in that kind of like introduction to Unity class, and so we have his speech, and then we have a little bit of a GDD, which is going to become a collector, hopefully, once the game meets the success that it deserves. I hope that I will be able to say, oh, look, he took my class. And so that's the GDD that he produced in that 2D game design and development class. But enough about me. Without further ado, Adam, the floor is yours. If you want to get going, it's all yours.
All right, let me just go ahead and share my screen and show you all my lovely presentation that I have. All right, can you all see this? Is this coming in?
Yes.
All right. All right, so yeah, hello everyone, I'm Adam, and today I'm going to be talking about being a Unity developer after college and continuing a project that you started in college after graduation. During this talk, I'll be talking about mostly my experiences in indie development and how I got a game published after college, and how I managed to stay motivated, and how I followed 4 different steps to get that game finished. And I'll also be giving, after that, I'll be giving some tips and advice on staying motivated post-graduation on a project. But before we get started, I just figured, since I think just about none of you, thought we would be cool if everyone wanted to go ahead and introduce themselves. So if you're a student right now, if you want to give your name, your ITGM focus, and what project you're working on right now, go for it. And if you're an alumni, I don't know if any of you all are. I don't recognize any of you.
Yeah, we have 2, and what I can do is call them in the order on the screens, because I guess the order is different for us, everybody. So Reed, do you want to get started?
Sure. Well, hi, I'm Reed, and I am a senior in game design, and I'm working on the project Nadia in Professor Guichard's Studio 3 class right now as a programmer and game designer. Yeah, anything else you want to know, or is that good?
No, that's great. Yeah, perfect.
Okay, cool.
Ryan.
Hey, I'm Ryan. I'm focusing mostly in VFX, and technical art is my primary direction I'm heading with ITGM. I'm a senior. I already finished my Studio 3 class with Professor Guichard, and so now I'm actually working on a different project with doing some VFX for a Studio 3 called Godslayer.
Oh, that's cool.
Jimmy.
I'm Jimmy. I am an alumni. I graduated this winter. I worked on a tactical game called Roses and Thorns, and I'm mainly a programmer and software engineer by trade.
Awesome.
Brianna. What we can do, Brianna, we can skip you and then come back to you. Oh, it's noisy. Okay, so She's Brianna, and she graduated last quarter, and she's looking to work as a prop designer.
Oh, nice.
She prop modeler, sorry. Yeah, she's in a noisy room, so she typed in the chat. I'm just doing the reading. Okay, Stephen.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi.
Guys?
Yep.
I'm Steven. I'm currently not working on any game right now, and I'm trying to focus on modeling.
Modeling. Okay.
Nice.
Jasper.
Hey, I am Jasper. I'm a senior as well. I'm actually in the same group as Reed, working on Nadia, as also a programmer and designer.
Awesome. Alexis.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alexis. I'm an alumni. I just graduated this winter with my focus on game design. I'm not working on anything right now, just smaller game jam projects. And I actually just got hired at Epic Games. I'm starting on Monday as a
Awesome.
QA tester.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Awesome. Haley.
Hello. My name's Haley. I'm a ITGM major. I'm currently also working on Nadia as a character artist with the other two.
Awesome. Mads.
Hey all, I'm Mads. I'm also a senior ITGM student. I'm currently in Professor Mamias's Studio 3 class, and I'm the programmer lead and a game designer on a first-person shooter called Godslayer. I get to work on that with Ryan, so cool stuff.
Awesome. And Claudia.
Hey guys, I'm Claudia. I'm actually a graphic design major, but I am taking programming with Gishard, and I'm doing my self-portrait right now.
Oh, awesome. That was a lot of fun when I did that.
Oh, the memories, the PTSDs of the self-portrait, like the first programming exercise.
It was definitely time consuming.
Yeah, I'm struggling right now.
It is time consuming. Okay, well, and I think that's about everybody. I don't think I missed anyone. If I did, I apologize. Well, Adam, the floor is back to you.
All right, so just a little bit about myself. Again, I'm Adam. I was part of the class of 2019. I was an ITGM with my focus being on game design. But right now I do have a little bit of experience in several different areas of game development, which is kind of a requirement when you're going indie like myself. Cyril, I think he's actually kind of said most of this, so I may be kind of repeating what he said. But right now, I currently work as a game designer for Pinnacle Solutions, which is a government contractor that where I'm currently doing working on maintenance software that's used for different aircrafts. But I also do freelance and indie dev on the side. Like he said earlier, I am working with Atmos Games. They're a well-known indie developer. They made the game Pinstripe in 2017. And they recently released Neversong in 2020. And so I'm working with them right now on a freelance project. And I also have 2 ship titles, which Cyril mentioned earlier. The one on the left is Galastar, which is a 2D scrolling shooter, arcade style shooter that I published on the Apple App Store in 2016. And the one on the right, which Cyril went a lot more in depth with, which I'll mostly be talking about with y'all during this talk, is Lost Caves. And Lost Caves is a 2D platformer collectathon that started as a project in Cyril's 2D game design class. Right now it's sold, it has over 500 downloads, and pretty much everyone who's played it and covered it has had almost, only good things to say about it. And during this talk, I'll be talking about this game's development journey and how I was able to continue development of it after college and in my free time, and how I was able to stay motivated and work on it after classes. But let's wind the clocks back a bit to 2011. Lost Caves started actually almost 10 years ago in an ID Tech camp. I imagine some of you may be familiar with ID Tech. They're a summer camp that teaches kids various different STEM related fields. a lot of which are in game design and development. And I was taking one where I was learning the engine Game Salad. During that class, I actually made a really small character controller for my game. I didn't have a whole lot done for it, but I did have the idea of what I wanted to do for it. But after that camp, I kind of sat on it for a little bit on the project, and I began working on it again in 2014, where I made something a little bit more in depth. I had a playable prototype that was made. I had a fully explorable level, basic, movement mechanics. You could jump and everything and move around. But the problem was that the engine that I was using, Game Salad, was a really limited engine, and I felt like I couldn't really do a lot of the stuff that I wanted to do because it was a really small and not super versatile engine. And so I was still kind of stuck with this game, and I couldn't really achieve the vision that I wanted. Fast forward to 2017, I'm now a student at SCAD, and I hear about Cyril's wonderful 2D game design class that he talked to me about during my sophomore year. And in fall of 2017, at the beginning of my junior year, I take this class and I use it as an excuse to finally jumpstart this game's development again. I remade it completely from the ground up in his class. He was teaching the Unity engine, which is way more versatile and way more useful than Game Salad. I pretty much had no limitations that were set in place. So I was able to kind of fully realize my game's vision. At this point in time, while I was developing it and receiving feedback from people in the class, I was able to refine the game even further. By the end of the class, I had a really fleshed out game. It had a beginning and an end. It had a couple of levels and a boss fight. But the issue that I had with it was that while it had a clear beginning and end to it, it still felt really small, and I felt like I really could do more with it. It was really, as I described it, it's complete but not finished, meaning that it's something that's presentable, but in my eyes, it really wasn't something that was totally done yet. And so after that class, I began to develop it more while I was in college in my free time. And even after graduation, I continued to work on it. But after graduation, as I continued to work on it, I realized that I started to hit a problem. I just didn't realize it yet. And that problem was that I wasn't getting a whole lot done. I would have small bursts of development where I would maybe work on it a lot for a few days. But then after that, I would go on long periods of time where I would just not touch the project at all. And I imagine this kind of happens to everyone. I imagine if any of you guys have done a project after classes or whatever, it may be a little bit difficult to stay motivated. And so you may continue on it for a few days, but then you kind of get distracted with other stuff and you find it really hard to get back into it. And it's especially hard when you aren't at the risk of flunking class. Because again, I was developing this, I was continuing to make this after college. So I had no class at this stage before. I was really just doing this for myself. I was also hitting major developers block where I was, even when I wanted to work on it, I felt like I didn't know what I wanted to work on. And in short, as Cyril may describe it, I was actually in the pit of despair, where I was just at a point where I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my game. I mean, I would do a little bit of it here and there, but I didn't really have a whole lot of direction with it. And oftentimes I would find it hard to get the motivation that I needed. But again, every now and then I would do a little bit of work here and there. And in summer of 2020, 2.5 years after I started working on the project in Cyril's class, I published I shared some of the work that I'm doing in a small Discord group that I'm in. And one of the responses that I got in that Discord group was particularly interesting. The guy who responded said, "How much of the work is complete? And how long has it taken you to get this far?" And this was a huge wake-up call for me, because it made me realize, how much of the work really was complete. Because at this point, I had no, clear direction of what I wanted where I wanted to go with this game. So I really didn't know how much of the work was complete. And at this current point in time, I mean, 2.5 years had passed since I started working on this project. And while I made some progress, I didn't feel like it was a significant amount of progress. So it was, and that was just because like I was, after graduation, I would, I would work on it in small bursts, and then I would go long periods of time without touching it. And so after hearing this and after giving it a lot of thought, I finally made the decision to just buck down. And after that point, I began working regularly on Lost K's. And one of the first things that I did, and if you also continue a project post graduation, one of the first steps that I did was I set up clear, defined, and realistic goals. And in addition to that, I also set up clear deadlines for when I would complete those goals. That way I had something to work towards, and I had a clear direction of what I wanted to do. And those goals were to reach beta by the end of the summer. And so I started this, I made this decision in June. So I had until like early September, when summer ends, to reach beta and have the game feature complete by that point. And then I also made the goal to complete it by the end of the year. So the rest of that time I would spend refining the game, fixing any bugs, listening to feedback from beta testers, and have it ready to ship by the end of the year. So those are the goals that I set. And in addition to setting those goals, the other step that I followed was that I worked consistently on my game. And by consistently, I meant I worked literally every day on it. Every day, 7 days a week, I would do some amount of work on it. And the key was to be consistent, because if I worked on this game in irregular intervals, like I did in the past, if I worked on it for a few days and then stopped working on it for a week, or, that week could eventually snowball into months. And if I kept doing that, the project would never get done. I would never reach those goals, and I would never reach those deadlines. And so I worked every day on it. And it wasn't the same amount of work that I would do every day. Some days I would do a whole lot of work on something, and other days I would maybe do a little bit of work, where I would maybe do like a couple of lines of code. I would maybe edit a sprite or work on a little bit of a level. But the amount of work I did per day didn't really matter as much as simply being consistent. Because the idea was that I needed to stay in that working mindset. And even if I just did a little bit of work each day, that would be enough to constantly keep Lost Caves in my head and basically have it living rent-free in there. In addition to that, I still had to stay accountable and to enforce those rules that I set, which can be kind of difficult when you aren't at the risk of flunking a class and having your professor yell at you, which, by the way, can happen. I never had a professor yell at me before, and I don't think Cyril will ever yell at you. At least I hope not. But I do know people that have been yelled at by the professors in the past. But when you don't have that risk, and you don't have a third party to kind of enforce your rules, and you really only have yourself to rely on, it's kind of difficult to stay accountable to yourself. And so what I did for that was actually, I would write devlogs weekly. Every Monday, every week, I would write a devlog of all the progress that I did. And by knowing that I had to write something every week, it made me feel obligated to have to do a significant amount of work during that week, so that I didn't just, get to that point where I needed a devlog written and I had nothing to write. I didn't want to, it always kept me worried about having nothing to write about. So by having that kind of thing always sitting there, it kind of helped motivate me to keep me wanting to work on my project, so I had something to write about. I would also publish these devlogs online so that people could actually read them. I would put them on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn, so that people would actually read these devlogs, which would further make me feel obligated even more to write them. Even if not a lot of people that I was sharing this to were actually reading my devlogs, the idea that some people still may be reading them was enough to, make me kind of force me to do a significant amount of work, so I had something to write about. I published these devlogs on itch.io, but all three websites that are on this slide, itch.io, GameJolt, and Game Searcher, all have methods are all of ways for you to write devlogs that you can publish online, which I do highly recommend. It does kind of help you kind of enforce your rules and stay motivated so that you have something to write about each week. And by following those 3 steps with staying, with setting up goals and working consistently and writing devlogs weekly so that I enforce the previous 2 steps, I got a whole lot done. And I was actually, by the end of the summer, by doing that, I was able to reach beta and get the game feature complete. But there was still one beast left for me to overcome, and that was marketing. Marketing was something that I overlooked a lot in previous projects, and it's something that can really be overlooked a lot with really any developer. You really, when you develop a project, you really can't rely on word of mouth. You really have to actually go out and reach out to people and talk about your game. And if you don't market it properly, no one's going to see it, unfortunately, and that's a sad reality. And it doesn't really matter how great your game is if you don't market it, no one's going to see it. And out of all of the things that I did in Lost Caves development, marketing was by far the most challenging. But what I did during that part of my journey, and I pretty much started marketing immediately after the game hit beta, was a lot of that time was spent gathering a list of press to contact. Let me see if I can zoom out because it doesn't look like it's showing the entire slide. Okay. Oh, whoops. Okay. But most of my time was spent gathering a list of press to contact. I would go on to various different publications. I would go on YouTube, Twitch. I would look for streamers, YouTubers, writers, bloggers, journalists, and I would look for what they covered. And if they covered games that were similar to mine, and again, Lost Caves was a retro-styled 2D platformer collectathon. If they were covering games that were similar to that, I would add them onto a document that I would then reference later, so that I would contact them. I would have their name, their email, their Twitter handle if they had one, and I would also have a link to any articles that they wrote or any YouTube videos that they made on similar looking games. And I would also go, I didn't just go for like the big leagues, like really big YouTubers and big publications. I would also go for a lot of mid-sized and smaller publications and YouTubers, because while they're smaller and they don't get as much reach as larger publications like IGN, Polygon, or Game Informer, they are more likely to respond to you because they don't get quite as much of an influx of emails as those other publications that I mentioned. Because those larger publications, they'll be getting emails from people like you or me like every day, and so it's really hard to get yourself noticed from them. But it's a lot easier with smaller publications. When I would contact these press, I would send them emails, and writing a really solid pitch email was really crucial. I needed something that would gather their attention. And so I would make sure that my emails were really short and to the point. I had a really short paragraph describing the game. I didn't want to have like a big wall of text that would feel like an essay. I wanted it to be really easy to read. So I had a couple of sentences that described the game and what it was about. I had clear bullet points that would define the game's key features. And I also made sure to add an attractive, alluring, and honestly clickbaity subject line, because the key was to make something, that would kind of stand out among all of the other emails that these people were getting, so that it would kind of, they would be more likely to click on it. I also didn't have it in the slide, but I also do recommend that when you send out emails to press, that you put a cover image of your game on the email instead of just having it be totally just text. Because it just makes the email look a lot more attractive, and it looks like a lot more thought was put into it than just a basic vanilla email. I also made sure that the introduction for every single email that I wrote was personal to every person I contacted. I didn't just have one big list of emails that I sent like a mass email to. I made sure that I did the research for each person that I contacted, and I would show that I did that research in the introduction. I would maybe talk about previous stuff that they wrote or that they played, and I would, if they played something that was similar to my game, I would say like, hey, if you played this game, I think you may like this game. I think it may be cool if you made a video about it or reviewed it on your website. And so I spent a lot of my time doing that, writing, doing research on press, getting emails and sending those emails out. But the unfortunate reality of all of this was that pretty much out of all the people I contacted, almost none of them ever responded to me. And this is going to be something that's going to happen to you all if you all, when you all get to this point. You're going to be sending out several emails. I sent out I think 50, and very few of them actually responded to me. And that actually left me feeling honestly depressed. I would wake up and I would look at my email and I would just see no one responded to any of the emails I sent. I would feel really upset. And it would honestly maybe wonder if my game was even, worth developing at this point if no one was ever, responding to my emails. And you probably may feel like that as well. But really the key to this, and I eventually realized this myself, was that you really just have to keep grinding. You got to keep powering through that and keep emailing press, because that's really your best bet. Because if you, even if you just get one confirmed coverage from some outlet, I mean, that's really all it takes, because eventually that one press outlet can snowball into several other, into more people that are reaching out to you and confirming coverage for your game. And eventually, after doing all of this and powering through it, it all paid off. All of that effort into research and press contact paid off. I got, I think, 8 confirmed outlets that were going to be covering Lost Caves either on launch or soon after launch. And even some Twitch streamers had pre-release copies that they live streamed the week before the game's release. So that was really what I needed to get to generate buzz for my game and to get enough people talking about it. And soon comes January 29th, 2021. That was Lost Caves launch day. By this point, I had the game feature complete, and I had the game by the end of the year in December. By that point, I had the game completely done. It was polished. It was a fully fledged game. I had 4 levels, a boss fight, actually I had 2 boss fights. And it was a fully playable, fully complete, fully realized game. And I had confirmed coverage from multiple outlets. And right now, the game has multiple online reviews, YouTube videos, and live streams. In fact, if you look at the image on the right, my game was actually shown on a small print magazine, and that's me holding the magazine right there. As I said before, the game has over 500 downloads, which may not seem like a lot, but when you realize how many games get put onto Steam and how few downloads they would get, 500 downloads, relatively speaking, is actually quite a lot. And in addition to that, I also got, there's 1,000 wish lists on the game right now. So there's even more people that are likely going to get the game at some point. And I was able to do all of this simply by following these steps that I laid out, which were setting realistic goals and deadlines, working at a consistent rate so that I would reach those deadlines, which would be working, for me personally, working every day. You all don't necessarily, I would like to say, you don't have to work every day. I know that kind of sounds like a lot. I personally recommend doing every day, but if working every other day is really something that works best for you, that's fine as well. It just, the point is that you want to stay consistent. But staying consistent, I wrote about my progress weekly so that I would stay obligated to keep working consistently, so I had something to write about. And I persistently searched for and contacted press and other sources, no matter how many of them did not respond to me. And all 4 of those, while they individually are difficult tasks to overcome, it's still pretty straightforward. And the steps themselves are not that complicated. And by following them, I was able to get my game published with moderate success. And if you all follow these steps with your own projects, chances are you will also have a similar amount of success. Or even more than mine. Your game may blow up if you follow these steps. Now, in addition to all of this, I do also have a couple of other tips and advice on staying motivated on a project, on just different things that you can do to kind of help get those creative juices flowing. One of the things that I recommend is going on walks or bike rides. The idea is just to kind of get away from your screen and to just kind of think of your project as a whole. I did a lot of biking last year. And while I was doing that, it did give me a lot of time to just kind of think about my project. And I would also listen to music that gave off a similar vibe to Lost Caves and what I was developing. So that really helped me think of different ideas for how to overcome and how to tackle certain things that I was doing in the game's development. And I think it will help you all too. I also recommend playing a lot of games that are similar to yours. It's gonna be a little bit obvious, but I still think it's kind of worth saying, because if you play games that are similar to to what you're developing, it can also give you ideas of how to approach certain things in your game's design, and also just give you different ideas for things to add. So if you're kind of in a bit of a developer's block, or you're kind of getting out of the pit of despair, playing similar games can kind of give you ideas of what you can add into your game. I also really recommend talking to others about your game. I did pretty much my game's entire development cycle, even back when it started as a project in a serials class. I talked to people about it, and by talking to people about it, I was growing a small amount of supporters, because no longer was it just me who cared about my game. I had other people that also cared about the game that I was developing and wanted to see it come to fruition. And that really helped drive me to keep working on it. And if you all do this, and if you talk to other people that will also support you in your game's development, that will also help drive you and help you stay motivated. And the last one, most certainly not least, and this is also probably really obvious, whatever you're working on after college, make sure it's something that you're passionate about. Again, it's obvious, but I think it's really important, because if you're working on a project post-college and it's really not something you're truly passionate about, it's going to be really, really hard to stay motivated and to continue working on it, because you really need to work on this project not just for others. You also should work on it for yourself. And if you aren't working on it for yourself and you're not passionate about it, it's going to be very hard to make a lot of progress on it. Yeah, that's what I got. That's what I did, and that's some of the advice that I have for continuing a project post graduation. But if any of you all have any questions, if you need me to clarify anything that I said, I apologize if I spoke a little bit fast in some parts. But if y'all have any questions you'd like to ask me, ask away.
How did you? At what point did you sort of realize that your game was ready to be complete? Like, how did you figure out that you had enough content at a certain stage for release?
So back when I started setting up the deadlines, I set up. I actually had to lower the game's scope a little bit, and so I kind of basically what I wanted to add was I knew it was complete because sorry, I'm trying to gather my words here.
Yeah.
I needed to I knew that I wanted to have at least a couple of more levels. So when I finished the game in serials class, I had 2 levels and a boss fight. And so when I started working on this game regularly, I decided to add 2 more levels, a smaller kind of pre-boss level, and a final boss. And those are kind of the smaller goals that I set in addition to those larger goals that I mentioned earlier. And after reaching those smaller goals and adding all of those levels and that boss fight, I knew that the game was complete by that point and had a very clear beginning, middle, and end to it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
All right, great.
I think, though, just as a quick extension of that, I'm curious, were there a lot of elements that you had thought of but then kind of scrapped because you wanted to like get this done, or like you axed them at the
Absolutely. Yeah, the actual game idea I had was a lot larger than this. So the game was actually separately, the big idea that I had was the game was going to have multiple different zones that were going to have a handful of levels in each zone. But I knew that like if I was going to do that, the game was going to take forever to release. And so I made the decision to cut the scope down, only have one zone for the game, which is just going to be those 4 levels and those 2 boss fights. So that that was a lot more realistic, and I knew I could complete that by the end of the year. And at some point, I may actually come back to this game and add those other zones and other content that I want to add. But I wanted to at least get that single zone finished before I released it, before I published it.
There is one thing though that I want to add, because like when Adam says that he has like 4 levels, like he's downplaying it. Like some of the levels are absolutely positively massive.
Yeah,
like,
they're pretty big levels.
They are very, very big levels. I've been following some of the Twitches that happened like when he was releasing his game, and I think like one of the reviewers said it's like it's been an hour and a half and I'm still in the same level, right? Like he has levels that take you 2 or 3 hours to complete. So we are not talking about like tiny little levels. We are talking about like stuff that has a massive scope. So I think in terms of gameplay, like, do you know how long it takes people to finish the game, the first playthrough?
Oh man, it's all over the place, really. I've seen people on YouTube that have completed the game in 2 hours, like the whole game from beginning to end, not necessarily completing it, but getting to the final boss. But I've seen people that are like 3 hours in and they're still at like, and they are only in the 3rd level. It really depends on how people play. But just due to the scale of the levels and how the levels are set up, because the levels are actually kind of they're very non-linear. They're kind of sandbox in nature, because the goal of the game is that you're collecting treasure in each level and you can kind of explore them at your own pace. And so depending on how you go through those levels can really the length of the game can really depend on how you're going through those levels. But I would say the average completion time of this game is probably 2 to 3, maybe 4 hours, I would say, just depending on how much time you're spending in them and how much treasure you're collecting.
Okay. Anybody else? Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
So from when you started working on the game every single day, 7 days a week, to when the game was finished, how long do you think that was?
Like how long did I work every day, or how long did I spend each day?
The period of time from when you started working on it every day to when it was finished. How long was that?
It was about 6 months. I started this back in June of 2020, and I worked on it pretty much every day. Actually, maybe it's been 7 months, because while I had the game like ready to ship by December, by the end of the year, I still did a little bit more work before launching it at the end of January. So it was really about 6 to 7 months where I was working on it every day. But again, I know that may sound like really difficult to do. So the main takeaway is just simply working on it consistently. So if you want to work on your game like every other day, like that's totally fine as well. But just as long as you're consistent with it, that's really what matters.
Awesome, thanks.
Yep.
Anybody else?
I've got a question. Okay, so I know you mentioned that in the beginning this started as like an idea that you had 10 plus years ago, and it was something you'd worked on personally before you brought it in as a SCAD project. Did you ever consider like bringing in classmates or friends to be teammates and work on it as a group project to make it to like a wider scope, or did you always know for sure this was something that you wanted to do on your own? And I'm just kind of curious about the thought behind that.
Yeah, I did think about maybe having a couple of people work on the project with me, but the project, I really felt like for something like this, it was really best for me to work on it on my own, because like I knew like exactly kind of the vision that I wanted, and so trying to see if I can kind of explain this better. I just felt like it would have been a lot easier if I had complete control over everything that I wanted to do. Especially since, I mean, everything that I was doing in this game, I pretty much had a decent amount of experience in. If this was like a 3D game, I would probably be working on this as a team. But since this was a relatively small 2D game, that I already, had experience with developing similar stuff in the past, I felt like I didn't really need a lot of other people to help develop the project with me. But at the same time, I would still reach out to people and get their thoughts on it. Like I would actually often share this game's progress with one of my close friends, and I would actually get his thoughts and some of his ideas. And a lot of his ideas are actually in this game right now. A lot of the enemies and one of the first boss that you fight was kind of inspired off of some of the ideas that he gave me. But for the development itself, since it's a relatively small game that was 2D, I felt like it was best for me to just work on this on my own. That way I had just a lot more control over everything that I wanted to do. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, for sure. That makes sense. Thanks.
Yep.
Do you have any remaining questions? I do have 3 points that I kind of want to kind of emphasize because they kind of resonate very much with me. The first one is like the point that you're making about consistency, like working about it every day, even though it may be just a little bit, maybe it may be just an hour or so. It's something that I've experienced myself. And I think that I could not agree more with what you're saying, is that it's not that much the amount of work that you're doing, it's that it's not allowing the game to slip off your mind. It kind of like keeps you absolutely obsessed about it.
Exactly.
And I think that if there is a key word about that whole presentation, and I know the word is poorly connoted, but it's about obsession, right? You do not carry a project for like, I don't know, like 7 years. Like if we take 2011 or 2014 as a starting point, but let's imagine at least the 4 years that happened between 2017 and then 2021. You cannot do that without like learning how to positively obsess about it and kind of like focus on it. And so on that topic of obsession, another thing that like made me strongly react as like, oh yeah, I completely know that, it's like the walks, because that's something that I discovered very, very lately, very recently. But like I don't bike, but I go for walks, and I realized that there was a lot of stuff that was happening during those walks, where I go to walk for an hour and a half, thinking about my game, and I do the same thing. I listen to music that kind of like matches up the
Exactly.
mood, etc. And this is insane. The amount of problem solving that you do when you're away from your screen, because you're not necessarily like the hands-on, etc., but you're thinking about kind of like high level like game design things, or, oh, you know what, when I'm going to be back at home, I'm going to try this, I'm going to try that. And it's been a monumental help. And that's something that I did not know. And your talk reminds me that I need to talk about that with students, particularly when I teach programming. It's like there is a temptation to kind of like try to brute force some problems and kind of like be in front of the code and like try and kind of bang your head. And sometimes like taking a little bit of field, taking a little bit of time away can be extremely beneficial for your project, because it allows you to kind of refocus, or kind of like not necessarily go obsess over the technical details, but more kind of like how things are designed and how things are thought up. And I've found out many times that I solved coding problems that I had by stepping away from the code. So this made me like, yeah, I was like, yeah, absolutely. Like I 100% agree with that. And so that's the thing. I think it's a work of love. You have to learn how to positively obsess about it, meaning like not let it slip away. And even when you're away, even when you're doing something else, kind of like keep that in a corner of your mind. And I think that's like, you put it very simply on point. And as I said, to me, it's one that I just realized very recently.
Yeah, I mean, the game really needs to live like rent free in your brain 24/7. Like it kind of always needs to sit in the back of your mind. But yeah.
So and so now that you're done, so you hinted on the fact that you may want to kind of like expand or like maybe add, different worlds. Like, so, I mean, like, because I remember us talking in class, you wanted pyramids and you wanted swamps and you wanted like a whole bunch of stuff. And I remember, for that matter, telling you focus on one thing first.
Yeah, exactly.
But now I'm going to ask you the opposite question. Like, do you feel a strong drive to kind of like, okay, now I'm done with the pyramid. Oh, there are all of those things that I want to do with that completely different looking environment with, or are you more kind of like, hey, you know what, like let it sit for a while, and like, how do you feel now that you're
It's
done?
a little bit of both. I am kind of letting it sit for a while. I haven't been working on it quite as intensely now. I've been kind of taking a bit of a break. In fact, like I've been kind of doing a lot of stuff right now. Once I kind of free myself up, I actually plan to take a little bit of a break from development. But I am still thinking about a lot of stuff for what I want to do with this game in the future. I actually had an idea for a kind of lava themed area that would happen after this. I haven't like actually developed anything for it, but I am kind of formulating some pre-production ideas for it that are kind of in the back of my mind. And then once I have some kind of clear defined stuff, I may start working on it. Probably maybe during the summer. I have a lot of stuff that I plan to work on during the summer, so I may start doing it at around then. But right now I am kind of being a little bit more laid back. I'm kind of letting the game sit there. I'll reach out to people every now and then, the kind of like streamers and YouTubers who may want to check out the game and help give it a little bit of buzz. But I'm not doing quite as much work right now, but I hope to maybe do a little bit more in the future, but we'll see what happens.
And I have a final question. Now that particularly that you're working with Atmos, which has absolutely some gorgeous games. I mean, like if you don't know Atmos games and if you don't know Pinstripe, like I really recommend that you check it out. It's extremely, there is tons of mood, tons of personality. How do you feel? How do you feel you're going to be able to juggle two very motivating projects on top of a job, maybe on top of that? Like, do you have ideas on how you're going to cope with this already, or is it like the big unknown?
Well, with juggling this up, I mean, one of the guy that I work for, for Atmos Games, Thomas Brush. I mean, he's a guy that I really respect, and kind of the main motivator for some of that stuff is not only the money that I'm making from this freelance work, because I actually am making pretty decent bank from it, but it's also the fact that like one of the main motivators for that is I just don't want to disappoint him. I mean, he's a guy he actually helped me a bit with Lost Caves development as well, and just in exchange for that, like I don't want to like upset him and disappoint him. So I mean, that is itself its own motivator. I mean, I'm able to, sorry, trying to gather my thoughts again here. I'm able to kind of motivate myself with Lost Caves as well, with just the amount of passion that goes into it. The idea is really just kind of allotting time for different stuff and when I'm going to work on it. Like I may just do a couple of hours of when I'm doing this, a couple of hours of when I'm doing that. And time management is really kind of a big key with also of being able to juggle those three things at once. Because I do know that usually because again, I do work full time while I'm doing this stuff. And it's pretty easy to get burned out when you come home from working 8 hours a day. So usually like when I come home, I'll like just kind of chill out for a little bit. I'll decompress, I'll play some games. Then after that, I'll usually later on in the evening, I'll actually do work either on with Atmos Games' project or with my own project. But I hope did that answer your question, Cyril?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, no, it does. And yeah, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays on one thing, and then Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Yeah. Okay. Well, do we have any final closing questions, statements? Anybody? Oh, going once, going twice. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for coming. Thank you so much, Adam, for sharing your thoughts on this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, it's this is all I wanted to hear. I mean, it's and it's particularly it feels good to see one of your students kind of like ship something and be proud of it. It's a project that looked already very promising in 2017. And for those of you that will be viewing that video at home, you have to know that these students, they make a game in 10 weeks. So it's a pretty fast pace, right? He was one of those students that was able to kind of like show a complete game, not finished, but a complete game in 10 weeks. And then after that, after the pressure of those 10 weeks, it's finding the motivation to kind of like actually finish, actually polish the content, etc., etc. And I think that it covers everything, right? Everything that an indie has to go through, meaning like not just doing the game, not just having the talent to kind of do everything, you know, the programming, the game design, the art, etc., but also putting the marketing cap when you need to. And finding the motivation. I mean, none of these are easy. None of these come easily or naturally. It all requires to kind of like work on yourself. So yeah, I mean, again, congratulations for a great game. For those of you that haven't tried it, I really encourage that you give it a shot. It's super fun. It's well designed. That's the thing. Not only it's fun, etc., but it's actually, and some of the levels are extremely well designed. So on top of that, you did a very good job, and you made your old professor proud.
I'm glad to hear that. It really means a lot.
So thanks again, everybody. We'll have more of those talks later in the quarter. I will announce them. You all can go back to your work. Good luck. And of course, Adam is also on Discord. So if you have any remaining questions and things like that, you can write to him directly. He's part of our little Discord community. Thank you, everybody.
If y'all want to, also on Facebook and LinkedIn, Adam D. Smith. So if any of you guys ever want to like friend me or connect to me on there, like you're more than welcome to.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Yep. Thanks for coming in and listening. And
thanks, Cyril.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Goodbye.